Joe Biden is ahead in the polls, but does anybody really want him to be president? Why is he ahead, and what do the other candidates have to do to take him out? My name is Speculator Seth, and this is the Donkey Race, where we talk about the race for president and who is going to be the Democrat nominee. Please like and subscribe, hit that bell icon if you want to get notifications. I have live stream every morning. I would love to see you guys there, but let's get into the analysis for this week. Last week, we talked about how Bernie Sanders had fallen in the polls. It looks like things have kind of equalized, and most of the polling this week has been pretty consistent. It looks like even though Bernie has fallen, that he has maintained his base, and that is definitely what we saw from all of the comments. So many Bernie Sanders fans coming out and saying that they're still sticking with him. So it does look like that the kind of base activist side of the party is still with Bernie Sanders. However, Joe Biden is doing really well in the polls right now. This week there was a poll released where they were doing head-to-head matchups with Donald Trump, and he was actually double-digit points ahead. But I have to wonder, does anybody really want Joe Biden to be president? Not that I have anything against him. I mean, I'm kind of agnostic in terms of all of the Democrat nominees are here, but I just don't know anybody that likes him. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about Joe Biden? Would he be an acceptable nominee, or would you do everything that you could to get rid of him? So the question is, why is he doing so well, and what are the other candidates going to have to do to take him out? Now, I know that some people will say the polls, they don't matter, or they're rigged, and there are certainly biases within the polls, but we cannot ignore the data. It's the only hard data that we have, and that is really a clue. If you want to help your candidate, you need to understand the polls so that you can see where the race is and know what kind of tactical decisions that you need to make. So why is Joe Biden doing so well compared to everybody else? Well, the first big thing is that Joe Biden pretty much stands alone over here as the moderate. Really, I mean, I wish I had more board space. Some people were complaining that Tulsi was over to the right, but I mean, honestly, as far left as the Democrat Party has become, this is really, I mean, the right is, you know, like in the whole other room over there, all right? But as the moderate, somebody running as a moderate in this race, it's really just Joe all by himself. Everybody else is running to the left. And there is still a significant portion of the Democrat Party that does not consider itself incredibly progressive or incredibly liberal. They are concerned about things like socialism and communism. Polls still show that Americans don't want to vote for a socialist. And so that has been a big advantage to Joe Biden. The other big advantage that Joe Biden has is among older people. So that poll that I mentioned earlier, where Joe Biden was doing well, almost double digits above Donald Trump in a head-to-head matchup, one of the reasons why he was doing so well was because of older voters. Now, that also might explain some of the differences in the polls. The landlines are going to oversample older voters. The online polls are going to oversample younger voters, but that doesn't quite, explain the gap. But it does show us where is he getting his support from, and older voters just seem to like him. He's kind of got that folksy kind of persona around him, and the older folks just really like that. And they also like that he is playing as a, bring everybody back together kind of a guy, that we need to get back to civility. That really resonates with the older voters, and they really like that. The last thing that is going really well for Biden right now is that he is picking up some of the minority vote. Now, all of the other guys on the far left have had some trouble with minority voters. I think we are all a little familiar with the problems that Bernie Sanders had last election cycle and this election cycle, but we're also seeing it here with Pete and Beto. I think Beto is a really good one to highlight here. Beto really comes off as privileged, and he's talked about that before. There's a really good article, I'll link it in the description here, where they talk about how Beto is really kind of like failed upwards. Like, he ran for Senate, he failed, and then he moved up and he ran for president. So it's like he's failing upwards, but that comes off as very privileged, and the minority voters don't like that. But Joe Biden, again, he's just kind of got that persona. He's comfortable around minorities, and he's comfortable interacting with voters and getting those personal interactions, and that's really, really working for him. So he's picking up a lot of the minority vote, where the other candidates have struggled. We have a debate in a month. What is kind of the game plan? Let's say that I'm Bernie Sanders or a Bernie Sanders supporter, because honestly, it looks like most of the people that are visiting my videos right now are Bernie Sanders supporters. So if you were Bernie Sanders and you wanted to win, and to be honest, I'm not so sure that Bernie wants to win, because sometimes he acts like he doesn't. But if he wants to win, Bernie, this is what you got to do. This is the war plan. And I'm not going to be nice about it. I mean, these are the things that you got to do, and these are going to be all of the dirty tricks. I know that Bernie is probably against most of those things, and that's why sometimes I say I don't know if he really actually wants to win, because he's not doing everything to do it. But if you're going to do everything that it takes, how would a traditional politician go about it? Well, here is the way that I would go about it. You want to look at the demographics. Like I said, we need to look at the polls. The polls matter, and we need to cut down some of Joe Biden's advantages, and we need to fix some of Bernie Sanders' disadvantages, right? So we talked about three main groups. What are some things that Bernie Sanders can do with those three main groups? So first of all, with the moderates, I think that Bernie Sanders needs to do some more work to show that he's not crazy. I know that he calls himself a socialist, and a lot of Americans do not want to vote for a socialist. That word is scary to them. And he needs to prove to them that that's not such a bad thing. That, hey, Social Security is a socialist program, and we can have socialist programs without it being the end of the United States. On the split side, to pull the moderates away from Biden, and I think that Bernie is already doing a good job with this. So they need to point out that Joe Biden really is kind of like the old guard. All right. He was a part of the Obama administration. He's been in politics for a very, very long time. And part of the reason that Donald Trump got elected was because people were not happy with the way that things used to be. They brought Donald Trump in to shake things up. And to go back to that is kind of setting ourselves up for more problems down the line, or at least that is the argument that I would be making. I saw that this week Biden was very much pushing his civility. Bernie was very much pushing the idea that I just explained here, that we can't just go back to the old thing. We need something new. It's not enough just to defeat Donald Trump. Okay, so next, older voters. What should Team Bernie do about older voters? Well, first, I think that they really need to destroy the image that older voters have in their minds of Biden. So the whole storyline of that Joe Biden is a creep and that he's touched people inappropriately, that did get some media coverage, but I don't think that that really reached the older voters. That is a line that I would continue to hit. You've got to show that Joe Biden is kind of creepy, and he says kind of dumb things from time to time. So he has made many, many gaffes in the past. He ended one of his presidential campaigns because of plagiarism. He's made many controversial comments. I don't think that any politician that I know of has more of a foot and mouth syndrome than Joe Biden. Bernie has to exploit that to destroy this image that many older voters have in their minds of somebody that is very folksy and moderate and electable, because he really is not. And I think that it's a big vulnerability that Biden has that the field has not been exploiting. On the other side, Bernie has to do, like I said, with the moderates, he has to prove to the older voters that he is electable and that, he's an okay guy. Now, I think that they have a lot of good infrastructure that Team Bernie can do with this, especially in the early states. And if I was Bernie, I would be very much focused on visiting the early states, going on as many campaign stops as I can, meeting as many people as I can, and getting all of those shots of, kissing the babies and all that sort of a thing. That's going to help with the older voters, and that is the place that I would look at to target that demographic. Okay, so now on to minorities. How should Bernie handle the problem with minorities? And this one is a little confusing to me because Bernie has been a very strong advocate of civil rights from the very, very beginning. That is something that maybe he could show a little bit more prominently. Maybe he can bring out some policies that are specifically to target minority voters that could really help. But I think that this one is very much on the other side with Biden here. All right. Biden, he is very much an old guard politician. He is very much a part of the establishment. That is something that minority voters definitely do not like. He has also used some of that privilege to him and his family's advantage. So what do you guys think? Do you think that this plan is a plan that would work for Bernie? Is this something that you think that Bernie would even do? Or do you think that Biden is just going to combust on his own and we don't really have to worry about it? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. So that's the setup. Really have a month. I don't expect to see too much of a change in the field, but we'll see what happens. There's still plenty of time here, a month before the first debates. But really, once we get into the debates, that's where the fun really, really begins. I'm super excited.